Hey everyone, happy St. Patrick's Day. Today I'm going to be making an Irish classic, corned beef. Now I've been brining my brisket for 7 days now, and I'm going to be simmering it for about 3 hours. However, if I were to smoke it, it would be considered pastrami. Now it turns out corned beef isn't actually an Irish national dish, but originates with Irish American culture. Irish American immigrants used corned beef as a bacon substitute in the early 19th century. It was initially considered a poor man's meal, and it was usually served in a canned form. The classic dish usually is served with cabbage and potatoes. However, today I'll be making a Reuben sandwich, and I'll be going through the steps for a Russian dressing as well. Alright, let's make some corned beef. Alright, let's start out with the brine. We're going to start out with a quart of water, 4 crushed garlic cloves, and then here I've got 1.5 cups of sea salt, half a cup of brown sugar, and 1/4 cup of pickling spices. I'm going to bring this up to a boil, and I'm going to be adding some ice to this. Okay, so it just reached the boil. I'm taking it off the heat. And right here I've got 3/4 of a gallon of ice water. I'm just going to be adding this brine to the water. And the reason I did this is just to cool down the brine as quickly as possible, because I don't want to add the brisket while it's hot. Okay, so it's cool enough that I can add the brisket. And here I've got the flat end of the brisket, and the reason you want to use the flat end, you can use either side, but the flat end has less fat, so when we cook it, it's going to be less chewy, it's going to be more tender. And I cleaned up a little bit of the fat off the brisket as well. So right now, I'm just adding it to the brine. Okay, so the last thing I've done here is I've taken a couple of small bowls and filled them with brine, and I'm kind of just using them as counterweights for the brisket so that they don't float up to the top. So next thing I'm going to be doing is wrapping this container in plastic very tightly, and I'm going to let it sit for about a week, and each day I'm going to flip the brisket over just to ensure that it's being properly brined throughout. See you in a week. Alright, so it's been a week, and we're going to start out by straining off the brine and rinsing the brisket. And we're going to rinse off this brine because it's going to avoid it from getting too salty. And then after that, we're going to put it back into the pot. And we're going to fill the pot with water, with 1 inch of water covering the brisket. And we're going to bring it up to a boil. Okay, so it just started boiling, so I am dropping it to a low temperature. And putting a lid on it, we're going to let this simmer for 30 minutes. We're going to strain off this first fill of water. And we're going to put the brisket back into the pot. And this time we're going to fill it with hot water. And we're going to bring it back up to a boil again, drop it down to a simmer, and then we're going to simmer it for 2 to 2.5 hours, looking for it to get fork tender. And once again, dropping it down to a simmer, covering it, and this should take us about 2.5 hours. While the corned beef is simmering, we're going to make a Russian dressing. So I'm starting out here with a half a cup of mayonnaise, quarter cup of pickle relish, tablespoon of lemon juice, 3 tablespoons of ketchup, 1 tablespoon of horseradish, teaspoon of onion powder, and a half a teaspoon of salt. Alright, it's been 2.5 hours. Just checking it if we're done this. So you can see, fork tender. So we're going to pull it out, put it on a cutting board, and let it rest for about 10 minutes. Alright, so it just finished resting. So next thing we're going to be doing is slicing the corned beef. Now, as you can see here, there are lines running along it. That's called the grain, and we always want to cut against it. So I'm going to be cutting slices like this. And that's it. Thanks for watching.